With Hurricane Lee turning into a major hurricane over the weekend, has Lee finally decided where to go, and will it make landfall in the United States? And with unseasonably cool temperatures making it feel like fall, will a potential warm-up be making a comeback? And will this be the final heat wave of the summer season? We'll be breaking that all down coming up in this video. Howdy y'all, welcome back. We're gonna take a look at the tropics as we still have Hurricane Lee out there, still doing the spin-a-rooney like Booker T. This did intensify into a Category 5 hurricane over the weekend with max winds of 145 miles an hour with a low pressure of 926 millibars. Now the hurricane hunters went out into the eye of this storm and shot some footage out there. As you can see, lots of lightning with this hurricane. Now, as quickly as it intensified, it quickly weakened down into a Category 3, and it's still a Category 3 today, with wind speeds of 115 miles an hour with max gusts of 140. Now, according to the National Hurricane Center, they are saying it's supposed to make landfall as a tropical storm with 50 mile an hour winds and 65 mile an hour wind gusts. It's supposed to make landfall over Maine and Nova Scotia. Now, the track and intensity is still very uncertain at this point. It could go into Massachusetts and New York City, or best case scenario, it could go out into the Atlantic and become a little fish storm. It could possibly make landfall as a Cat 1. As we can see the wording from the National Hurricane Center, it still remains too soon to know what kind of impacts we could expect and the exact track of it. And even though we're out there on the East Coast and down here in the Caribbean Islands, y'all not getting infected by it, but you could still expect some dangerous surf and life-threatening rip currents out there, so please be aware of that. And as we look at the simulated infrared radar on the Euro model, now this is one model of many that show the track of Hurricane Lee. As it does make it turn towards the north, it's going to weaken down into a Category 2 as early as the 13th due to some wind shear out east. And then it looks like it's going to make landfall over Massachusetts and over by Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Don't look like Nova Scotia is going to have much impact. Y'all are still going to get impact from it, but it's not going to be as bad as over here by Massachusetts and over by Vermont and New Hampshire. But according to the Euro, it's going to make landfall over there as a tropical storm. But this is still pretty far out, and again, we do not know what the exact track will be, or how intense this will be, but regardless of the intensity in the track, you should still prepare anyways up here for a tropical storm or a hurricane. And I will have updates on here as this does get closer to making landfall, so make sure you are subscribed down below and hit the bell notifications so you get notified when I do upload a video. And I'm sure y'all are curious what kind of other hurricanes and tropical storms there are out there that could affect the homeland. We have Hurricane Margaret. This won't affect that homeland any, but it is a Category 1 hurricane. Wind speeds of 85 miles an hour, max of 105. It's going to remain a Category 1 up until the 14th, where it starts to weaken down into a tropical storm by the 16th. Now, this is the same time that Hurricane Lee is expected to make landfall, but it's just going to remain a fish storm out there as it encounters some cold North Atlantic water. That's something we got to keep our eye on, other than Hurricane Lee, is the 70% chance for tropical storm development out here. Now, y'all can take a look at the wording if you want to. Pause the video anytime. This does look like we could expect another tropical storm that could potentially affect the homeland, as we do have some development out here. Definitely something to keep our eye on, and we'll keep an eye on it as we do move forward. So let's go ahead and take a look at what kind of severe weather we could expect for the next upcoming days. As we take a look at the Storm Prediction Center, we do have some severe weather today. We have 3 areas of concern, as there's a marginal risk, which spans from northeastern Alabama up into New Jersey, one down here from Georgia into Florida, and one over here from New Mexico on over into Arizona. Now, there is a tornado threat today, which is a low wind threat over here by eastern Pennsylvania into Maryland. As far as damaging wind threat goes, all 3 marginal risk areas are under the gun for damaging winds, which is a low wind threat, which is a 5% chance. There is a large hail threat over here by Florida and over here by New Mexico and Arizona. Really, the highest threat today is really going to be flooding, as there is a slight risk for excessive rainfall over New Mexico and Arizona for upwards of 2 to 4 inches of rain today. So if you see a flooded roadway, do not drive through the flooded roadway. If you live in a low-lying area, please be aware of that. And we push off into Hump Day. There is another marginal risk over here by Massachusetts and Connecticut, and over here by New Mexico. Again, there is a 2% chance for tornadoes, which is over here in the northeastern part of the country. The damaging wind threat goes, both marginal risk zones are in the gun for damaging winds. Low wind threat, so threat nonetheless. As far as large hail threat goes, over here by New Mexico, y'all are the only ones under the low wind threat for hail. As we push off into Thursday, there is no severe weather except for just general summertime thunderstorms. here in the light green. As far as flooding goes, really that's the biggest threat for the next 3 days, as there is another slight risk for excessive rainfall tomorrow here in the yellow. And as far as day 3 goes, for Thursday, another slight risk for excessive rainfall again. If you're under the slight risk for excessive rainfall, I would expect upwards of 2 to 4 inches of rain. And again, safe on the roadway, don't drive through it. Turn around, do not drown if you live in a low-lying area. Just again, please be aware of that. Let's go and take a look at the timing of when you could expect the worst and severe weather. As I zoom in here, we're going to focus over here on the eastern part of the country. Keep in mind that date time's up here if you want to keep track. I push this forward. We're just going to expect some general summertime scattered showers and thunderstorms. Could bring upwards of 20 to 30 mile an hour winds with any of these storms. Hail is not likely, except for down here by Florida. You can see with any of these pop-up showers, you could experience some hail within those. So please be aware of that. Put anything up you don't want damage from hail today. Write down anything you do not want blown around. As far as the tornado threat goes, we can't leave y'all out that are in the 2% chance. I would expect the tornado threat to occur right around midnight to right around 3 o'clock is when I would be on high alert for tornadoes today. So just make sure you have the batteries fresh on the weather radios. Make sure you have the phones charged up. Keep the alerts on there. And know where to go when the tornado warning does go off. Make sure you're in an interior room away from windows. As we look over here in the desert southwest, y'all are under the flooding threat today. That's your primary threat other than damaging winds and large hail. There's no tornado threat. We could experience severe weather in this area from right around 3 o'clock through right around 9 o'clock is when I would expect some damaging winds. As far as the wind threat goes, you could experience upwards of 20 to 40 mile an hour winds, with wind gusts of upwards of 50 mile an hour, so please be aware of that. Write down anything you don't want blown around today. As we push off into hump day, we get another marginal risk over here by New Mexico. What's the primary threat for y'all is just a low end threat for winds and hail. No tornado threat for y'all. Now, again, these are just going to be general showers and thunderstorms that we see in the summertime. Right around 4 o'clock is when I would expect some severe weather, and that's going to last all the way through right around 8 o'clock. Then you're just it's gonna weaken down into some just heavy rain showers where you're gonna be dealing with some flooding from this. As we look at the tornado threat up here in the northeastern part of the country, I would expect the tornado threat to occur at right around 4 o'clock through right around 6 o'clock is when I would expect a tornado or two. So again, like I said earlier, just make sure the alerts are turned on and know where to go when a tornado warning does go through. That does look like a line of showers and thunderstorms are going to be rolling through, bringing in high winds and an isolated tornado. So now that we know the timing of the severe weather and what kind of tropical storms and hurricanes are forming out there, it's going to take a look at what we could expect as we move into the middle and end of September. And to determine what we could expect as we head into the middle and end of September, let's go and take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly map. This determines where our troughs and ridges can set up. As we know, we've been unseasonably cool for the central and eastern part of the country where it's been feeling like fall, while the western part of the country has been above average. Now, the first day of fall is next week, so please get excited for that and make sure you go out and get your pumpkin spice drinks. Now, as we push this forward, we see Hurricane Lee is starting to make its trek towards the north, while this trough is starting to spread its way across much of the country. Now, as this does make its trek towards the north, it's going to weaken down significantly because it's going to shear out due to this troughing pattern. But a major ridge is going to start to set in for the northeastern part of the country, and that's why the National Hurricane Center thinks it's going to make that left turn into Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine, and make landfall over there because of this ridge. Now, if this ridge wasn't there and a major trough was just setting in for much of this area, this would easily churn out into the Atlantic and become a little fish storm. But due to this little ridge right here, that's why the National Hurricane Center is thinking it's going to make a left turn. Now, this is still pretty far out, latitude to be determined. The track is still very uncertain at this point. But according to the Euro, it's going to weaken down into a tropical storm, potentially, and make landfall over by Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. And after this tropical storm moves inland, it looks like much of the eastern part of the country is going to coming to a major troughing pattern, while the western part of the country is going to be encountering a major ridge. And it looks like this pattern is going to shift yet again as we head into the 21st. Now, this is over 240 hours out. Anything can will change by then, but by the 21st, it looks like a major ridge is going to be setting in, and it looks like a trough is going to set in for the Dakotas, while a low pressure system is going to be setting in for the deep south, and also over here by California as well. Now, before we get into the temperature outlook, let's take a look at the temperature anomalies. This shows us above and below average trends. It looks like much of the central and eastern part of the country is going to come into a below average trend due to a trough, and the northwest part of the country is going to remain above average for a little while. And it looks like much of the country, as we head into the week of the 20th, like much of the country is going to be experiencing above average temperatures, except for up by the Dakotas, down here in by California, over here by Florida. And as we take a look at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, it looks like it's in agreement with that, as much of the country is going to come into an above average temperature trend, while the central and eastern part of the country and over here by California is going to come into a near normal or below average temperature trend. The next 8 to 14 days, this takes us out into the 20th, says that it's in agreement with the temperature anomaly map, as much of the country is going to be experiencing above average temperatures, while the southwestern part of the country is going to be experiencing below average. Now, knowing that much of the country is going to come into above average temperatures, what kind of actual temperatures are we going to expect? As you can see, really cool air is going to spread as far south as New Mexico in the morning of the 12th. And it looks like cool air is going to be in this back and forth pattern. Cool air, warm air is going to be back and forth, with cool air stretching as far south as Tennessee by the 15th. We're going to be in this pattern for quite some time, as it looks like some 50-degree temperatures are going to be expected by the 18th. And then by the time we head into the week of the 20th, it looks like some hot air is making a return as we are heading into the end of September. It looks like summertime ain't going to be letting go anytime soon. We're just getting a false fall. So just prepare for the heat, as it's going to be making a comeback. Now, before we get into the simulated radar, let's take a look at the precipitation map for the next 6 to 10 days. As it looks like much of the country is going to come into a drying pattern here in the brown, while the northeast, central, and western part of the country is going to come into sort of an above average pattern as far as precip goes. Next 8 to 14 days, looks like much of the western part of the country is going to come into an above average, while the eastern part of the country is going to come into an below average pattern. And as we can see on the simulated radar, we know we got severe weather for the next couple of days. Really not that big of a deal. Just low end tornado threat for the northeast part of the country for the next couple of days. And really the primary threats are mainly going to be flooding. As you can see, dealing with a lot of rainfall down here in the southwest part of the country, over by Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. And even over here in the northeast, y'all going to come into a lot of rainfall, as well as Hurricane Lee is going to be starting to make landfall by this time. Y'all going to come into some heavy rain, winds, and a lot of problems for y'all over there. It looks like as we head towards the end of the month, looks like much of the country is going to come into a drying pattern, while down here by Florida, y'all are going to come into some heavy rainfall. But as we head into the end of the month, remember the little trough setting up over here in the Dakotas? Looks like we could possibly experience some severe weather, as a low pressure system is going to be setting up right here. And as y'all may know, cool and hot air do not mix. So it looks like yet another wild weather pattern is going to be in store as we head towards the end of September, as it looks like unseasonably cool temperatures are going to be setting in for quite some time. But don't be fooled, because summertime heat is going to make a return. As far as Hurricane Lee goes, the track is still very uncertain at this point, but if you live up there by Maine, New Hampshire, Nova Scotia, down by Massachusetts, and even in New York City, please be on high alert. I will have updates as this does get closer to making landfall. So make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. Make sure you go follow my Rumble channel as well, and follow my Twitter page, so we'll have updates on there too. And even if you're on the east coast of the country and down by the Caribbean islands, please be aware of that. Even though you're not going to be getting direct impacts from Hurricane Lee, that dangerous surf and high rip currents are going to be possible. So please be aware of that. If you're within the marginal risk zones for the next couple days, not much to be worried about except for a small threat for damaging winds and hail, and a tornado or two can't be ruled out up in the northeast. Your main threats for the next couple days is mainly going to be flash flooding, so turn around, do not drown if you see a flooded roadway. If you live in a low-lying area, please be aware of that. So if you liked the video, please hit that thumbs up button. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Constructive feedback is always appreciated. I appreciate each and every one of y'all for tuning in. And until next time, never stop forecasting.